This is gonna be so much fun. I have, we all. This is just crazy. I have watched this person from basically a baby, a tiny tot, into becoming like a thing, like Krysta Rodriguez. Everybody, like this is just so. It's been so wild, and I feel like I'm a parent, and getting to kind of, even though I'm not old enough to be your parent, thank God. But I am so thrilled for all of her accomplishments, and there's so many. I don't have time to name them all, but I'm gonna just go through a couple. You know her from many a Broadway show, Good Vibrations, and or tour, The Boyfriends, both Spring Awakenings, A Chorus Line, In the Heights, Addams Family, First Date, and most recently Hercules. Of course, she's also done a bunch on TV and film, including, of course, a big moment for our industry, Smash, Trial and Error, and Quantico. I'm a big Quantico fan. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome, Krysta Rodriguez!
I've been watching Parks and Rec again, and like Crazy Ira and the Douche, like when they
yes,
there's like sound effects and stuff. I'm having
that's it. Welcome to our Parks and Rec. I want to start at the very beginning. So Krysta and I, this is not her very beginning, but Krysta and I met doing a little production of Cinderella in 1998, where all of the Dawson children, and it was like that was a big moment for that, but for Orange County Children's Theater, where it was like literally like all of the peoples that were either graduating out of it or coming into it, like that was like the one show I feel like everyone's worlds kind of collided. Totally. And I ended up having to take over as not the director, but the choreographer. Watch out. And I remember working with Krysta and Amanda Loomer. They were the stepsisters. And I remember working with them in a room on their duet, and literally, no joke, thinking as like younger TJ going, this girl is going to be a thing. Like, she was a star from early on, and I love when I'm not wrong. And she went on to do amazing, great things. So Krysta, tell us, I remember, I think back in the day, I saw a clip of you even on like a TBN, like kid show or something like that. Am I wrong? No, I was right.
No, that's it. You're right.
So,
yeah.
You've been in the industry for forever. So tell me, like, how did you get started? When did you know, like, this is what I want to do? Your parents obviously were amazing and nurtured that. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was always like in the industry light. Like we grew up in Southern California. We have proximity to a lot of stuff that a lot of people don't have in certain areas. So I always sort of knew that I liked performing, but I didn't know what that meant as a career, certainly, okay. But even as like a way to do things. I went to a private school where sports was a big deal, and there wasn't an arts program. There was a choir that I got into, but like not really being surrounded by it as an option constantly. And but looking back on it, realizing that I was still finding ways to do it. And that was with like the choir, or with this was like a children's TV show, which honestly at the time, I think I was like 10 or something, and I don't even remember that it was like a TV show. I just remember that we would get together with friends and learn dances, and then we'd like film them, you know, like yeah. I don't think it really got into my head that I was like on a TV show, especially because it's like cable access. It's not anything.
Right. And at that time, that was like not what it is now.
No. Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't like I was on Barney or anything. Yeah. It was like, you know, I was just singing for Jesus on TV. Yeah, quite literally. And, but like kind of knowing that I was, good at it, I guess, or that I thrived in the environment. I liked going home and like learning, practicing the steps, and I liked the memorization of it. I knew I liked the aspects of it that I didn't like about basketball or volleyball or anything. So it wasn't until I was around pretty much right before we did Cinderella. I had done one other show with OCCT. I had done Annie Warbucks right before that.
You only did one other show, and you were that kind of bold
Well,
performer. I mean, you guys, I wish I had a clip of this. I would play you because she was cuckoo bananas great, and she
it
was
was Cuckoo Bananas.
good.
But I was also like, didn't know, I don't know. I had done Annie Warbucks. We had done it twice. Remember? I don't remember if you
Oh
remember
yes,
that.
yes,
They
yes,
had like
yes,
done
yes.
the winter show, and then they did the spring show. And like getting into OCCT was like breaking into Fort Knox. It was like such a big deal. And I had tried out and not made it a bunch of times. And like, it just happened that I got this part, and in Annie Warbucks that was small, but like I could sort of cut my teeth at it. So when I auditioned for Cinderella, and I got a callback for Cinderella and a stepsister, and I was like, well, stepsister, I don't know what that's all about. Like, of course you want to be Cinderella when you're like, and actually the director of that like saw something in me that was ballsy, because there were other girls. I mean, you remember what these callbacks were like. We're in an auditorium with like
And everyone's
150
there
people.
watching each other. Yeah.
Everyone's watching, and I'm with people who have idolized, who are older than me and
Yeah.
more experienced, you know.
Lisa Clayton.
And
Yeah.
Lisa Clayton, and
Yeah.
I can't even remember her name, but this one girl that came from APA that was like unreal as a stepsister. Like, she should have gotten it, you know. It was like one of those things where you're watching everyone be amazing, and you either show up or you don't. And I remember being like, I guess it's time to show up. And so surprised that I got that part. So anyway,
You were
so
kind
that,
of like, I remember it being a talk only because you were kind of like the big, like, ooh, she gotta.
yeah, I was new. And a lot of people were like, who are you? Like, what are you, showing up and whatever. And like, those people are still like my best friends, which is hilarious. But at the time it was like, show us your stuff. And I was like young and naive enough to be like, okay, here's my stuff, rather than like letting it make me be like, oh, these people don't like me. I was like, oh, but I know how to do this, you know. So yeah, growing experiences a lot at that young age. And then from that show, I remember sitting in a circle, everyone like introducing who they were, where they went to school, and like a quarter, if not more, people said, I went to OSHA, I go to OSHA, I go to OSHA, I go to app, I go to OSHA. And that being my first introduction to those schools, and like that this is something I could do full time, that going to that private middle school didn't mean I had to just go to Orange Lutheran and do that, like, you know, sort of track that the Orange County kids did. Like, I could do something that felt more like who I was. And so I auditioned for OSHA, did not get in, auditioned again, and then got in. And then and that's sort of what started the whole path. Was like,
that's just amazing though, like, to know there's so many people that have that same story of like the don't get in and they're not, but persistence is key, and you just kept breaking down the door, and now look at you. I love it. So so amazing. So I want to start diving into kind of your journey then. Obviously you moved to New York, and you booked your first Broadway show, which we'll talk about. But before we do, I want to touch on the fact that I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, your career is unique in that I think you've only ever been a replacement once. I think you've otherwise always been in the original company of a show. Am I right?
That's true.
Okay.
That is true.
So, which is amazing. This is like not.
I never thought about that.
I mean, I until I started putting together like this thing to talk to you today, I was like, she's only been a replacement one time, and which is like, you know, a really amazing thing. So, talk about real quickly like what that is like, because you when you're not replacing someone, you have the luxury of more rehearsal time. You're getting to obviously work with the entire creative and all the company and all that. So when you went into a chorus line, which is such a an amazing experience to be a part of in any way, as an artist, having to jump into that show, you know, what was that? Do you feel like your experience as a swing understudy, all that stuff, like really, you know, prepared you for that moment of how fast that must have been?
Yeah, I think it did. In some ways, I got a better situation for a chorus line because we were all replacing at the same time. It was like the year-end contracts had gone up. So not everybody, but I think we had like 11 people going on the line. Like it was a big group. So I actually had a good situation there. Otherwise, you would get 2 weeks, just you and a dance captain alone in a room and like thrown on stage, which happens often.
Yeah.
But we got to rehearse all sort of in a group, the 11 of us.
Well, that's
And
nice.
yeah, and Bjork was there and Bob Avian. Like they brought the directors and the choreographers back because this was like the new
The
cast,
first
it was like,
pack, yeah.
yeah, the first replacement cast, although they had been sort of slowly putting people in. But so that was a different experience, but it was hard. I mean, that was a full rehearsal process, and it's almost nice to do it in 2 weeks because then it's like over and you're thrown in. Like we had
Well, you're
4
basically doing
weeks.
like a regional theater rehearsal process, but for
Totally,
Broadway.
totally. And I don't know, you guys have done Chorus Line, I'm sure.
Yeah, we have, yeah.
Yeah. It's a strict show. It's not a like come up with your own. It's like your left pinky is on 0 and your right hand is like to your head, and
Yeah.
and it is strict, and and it was hard, and we had to have a warm up every day. Like I had a roommate that and do you know Andrew Samansky? I was
Yeah.
living with Andrew Samansky, and we had never met. He was a referral of a friend. He came and lived with me. He went away for like 2 weeks and came back, and he was like, you became a different person. Like my body was like jacked, and like I just stretched into a dancer, even though I don't really consider myself a dancer. It's
Right.
like when you are doing that warm up with Bjork every day and you are dancing that stuff every day, it's like I just became this athlete that could handle that show. Otherwise I couldn't have done it. So I'm grateful for
She's
that
the one
time.
that knows how to live tall too, because she's so tiny, but
Yeah,
she's a giant. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that
How was that?
it was great.
How was it later than revisiting it at the Bowl
The
in different
best.
shoes? Yeah.
The best. Doing that show again, like I will be honest, I had a hard time doing it. I had a hard time with it on Broadway because it's so taxing, and it's mentally exhausting, and I don't know, it was a harder experience than like coming from things that were dancing on surfboards. Like this was like I was having to access a lot of different emotions, and so by the time we did it at the Bowl, I was a little bit like, oh, this show is so hard. And that was like it changed my whole experience of the show
It also
entirely.
just it's so fast, like it's so fast. The
So
Bowl is
fast.
so fast, you don't have time to think. I literally, I think I knew everybody in that cast. I was so bummed to not see it.
Yeah.
I heard
Oh,
it was
it was
amazing,
awesome. And
but
it's the
yeah,
Bowl's an incredible experience. You're just like 14,000 people. And also, I think what was really special, and we can talk about this later, it's similar to happened to me with Spring Awakening, was to revisit a show like
yes,
10 years later.
yes,
And with Spring Awakening, I played the same part, which was its own experience. And this thing, I played a different part, and I grew up with that character. Like when I
yeah,
was 23, BB made sense. I was young, I was eager, I was like,
right,
well, this is my dream. And
right.
then I'm 33, I've like lived a crazy life at this point, and I'm playing Diana, who is now like telling everybody like, I fought for this, I bled for this, I
Yeah,
ached for this, and this
yeah.
is what we're doing. And it was cathartic to be able to step into that phase of my life with that
And to
character.
get to sing like that
The
song.
best songs. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's the most powerful moment in the show. One of them. I mean, there's a few. Obviously, it's a.
Yeah.
We can spend a whole lot of time talking about
Oh
chorus,
yeah.
but now moving into good vibrations. So,
Speaking of pivotal
so
roles of my life.
yes. So real quick, I don't want to. I'm not going to spend because there's so many incredible
Yeah.
things to talk about. But just to giving people who are aspiring, who are either currently in New York waiting for that first Broadway gig, who are thinking about moving to New York, what was that like for you briefly? Like, how long were you there before? Were you among the few that booked quickly, or were you like, I was there for a minute and then that happened?
Well, I'm very lucky because I came here for college. So I was here at NYU. And so I know I didn't have that transition where I was like, got to find an apartment, got to get a temp job. Like I didn't have to do that stuff. I was also lucky because while I was at OSHA, I had done Gidget with Francis Ford Coppola, which was this like bizarre
That was insane.
convergence of things. And I had gotten an agent while doing that who happened to be bi-coastal. So when I moved to New York, I auditioned for the New York branch of the agency and was accepted there. Now they weren't sending me out on anything really, because I was still in school and because nobody knew me. But I had that sort of foundation already where I didn't have to, send out, paper, which they used to do back in the day. You would mail things to people. And so, but I still would go to open calls and do all of that stuff. And I would just go to anything that made sense and stuff that didn't make sense, and just learned a lot. And it wasn't until I started getting callbacks for things, and just based on open calls, that my agent started taking notice. And then I just really think I was lucky enough to be there at a time when like these new pop rock musicals were coming up. It wasn't so important to be like a traditional ingenue that had a classic face. Like, it was kind of about young, scrappy kids. And that's kind of what Good Vibrations was, is Beach Boys. It's a bunch of like California surfers, which I, was from California. And I wasn't a surfer, but like, I just feel like it kind of happened to happen at the right time. So yeah, I was 19 when I got my first Broadway show. And so I'd gotten Good Vibration. I'd gotten a show at Encores, which is how I got my equity card, at the end of my sophomore year of college. And then in the summer between my sophomore and junior year, I got the Out of Town of Good Vibrations. And then when it moved to New York, I got cast in that.
Encores is such a great way to get your equity card, but B, just like networking, and it's such an invaluable experience.
It was Casey Nicholaw's first choreography job when I was 17. I thought nothing of it. It was the most natural thing I had ever thought. I had been doing book reports about New York since I was in, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to be. And so it felt great.
Like, it was no surprise to any of us, like, that this happened for her, because we all, like, my sister's nodding her head yes right now. It was literally just one of those things where, like, oh yeah, of course it did.
Well, it was just like definitely what I couldn't, because I had started in LA and I'd gone to TV auditions and stuff like that, and I knew, it just struck me like I would regret not going to New York, because it's been what I wanted to do always. And so I really just pushed to get that, and it kind of all happened. But yeah, it was super easy to me, and I still love it.
Another question I have for you, your initial part of your career, you did a lot of like swing, understudy stuff. Do you think that helped you? Well, this is like probably an impossible question, because they both are both jobs, being like either carrying a show or being a leading role in a show versus being a swing, are very challenging in their own ways. But do you feel that one is harder than the other, and or do you feel that your time as a swing and understudy and all that helped prepare you mentally, physically for the jobs that then later came?
Definitely. I think that it prepared me. I mean, there is no better school, because it takes a lot of ego out of it too. It's like, you can't be like, look at what I can do and everyone can see. It's like all of your work is behind the scenes. Your job is to disappear. And I remember like going to my first rehearsal, I was a swing in Good Vibrations, and them handing out vocal parts, like, okay, you'll be a tenor, bass, alto, whatever. And me not getting a vocal part. And obviously I wouldn't have a vocal part, but it was like this realization that I am completely in service of not just the show, but this cast. And so it gave me a big wake-up call as to like, what is the beauty of being in service. And that like helped a lot. And then I had a good memory and a good work ethic anyway, but you have to really, I mean, you have to be doing your homework. You cannot be caught with your pants down in that situation. It just, and I covered, I was like a big understudy of multiple parts for 3 different shows. And I always went on in previews. Always, which means I had 0 rehearsal by the first time I had gone on. My Broadway debut was our second preview, and I had 0 rehearsals. Like, costumes weren't even made for me yet, and I was pushed on stage. So like,
it's my palms sweat.
Yeah. I got pushed on stage, and I said to myself, this is the stupidest job. Who made this up? Like, who created the swing job? Because I want to find them and kill them.
We've literally done panels on this a couple times now on being a swing and understudy, a standby, and I wanted to ask you about it, because you literally just echoed so much of what's been covered in that, about it being selfless and has to be ego free. And our friend Chelsea was a standby for Alphaba. She's like, I'm not even I'm not listed. She's like, I'm truly like invisible.
Yeah. You're there for the audience. You're there to save the show and get no recognition for it whatsoever. You get the "aw" when they announce your name.
Chelsea, we had someone who said literally they heard someone say, "Oh, I guess the B cast is on today."
Ooh,
and
no.
I was like, "Oh, yuck!" Like, because sometimes the culture can be toxic, but
Totally.
you know, sometimes it isn't. So. There's a follow-up question from our chat room about making the transition from swinging and understudying to booking a role. Did you feel like it was hard to make that transition? It's a great question. Liz Adabale.
Well, it can be a very hard transition. I swung for Good Vibrations, and then I swung for the first Spring Awakening, even though I was on stage. And I loved Spring Awakening more than any experience. I mean, it's like still so special to me. And I got a call to come and audition for the revival of A Chorus Line. And I was like, why would I want to do that? I'm like, we just won 1 million Tonys and we're in like the hottest show on Broadway. Why would I want to leave? And my friend who I talked to about it, she was like, yeah, you just won all the Tonys. Like the only thing left here with this show is to ride it out until the end. Until it closes. And this is the opportunity to put your name on a part. And it's not the flashiest show. It's not the show that's winning all the awards and all the celebrities are going to, but you can make your name there. And so I did, and then went back to being ensemble. In the Heights came right after that, and I was in the ensemble and I covered 3 parts. So it wasn't like it transitioned magically, but it did teach me, and it taught me a lot. And also when I auditioned for Addams Family the first time, I was in the Heights at that time, and they were reluctant. I didn't get it the first time. They were reluctant to give it to me because I didn't have a big flashy lead on my resume.
Well, because I mean which we will talk about in a second, but you were, I mean, like, I would know, it was no wonder they probably thought that, because literally every person in it was some
was icon. A huge star. And so I did the reading of it as an ensemble member, and then auditioned again to prove that I was like a team player. So like even me getting lead roles came from me agreeing to not do them, which is, I don't even say that that's the way to do it. Like sometimes I would say, no, put your foot down. Don't take that ensemble part anymore. Sometimes you have to do that. But for me, it kind of came out of like just showing up and doing the work all the time.
I think though, as much as I sometimes you do have to put your foot down. I've heard that happen to a lot of people, but I think as I'm starting to even just hear, even though I know you, it's like getting to interview you is a totally different thing, because you hear more intimate details that you maybe don't talk about when you're catching up on the side of the street in New York.
Right.
So, but like, you know, when you are putting your ego truly aside, that's infectious, and people want to work with that, and people go, she's willing to do whatever. She should be the lead, you know, she should be this, because it's like, I want to work with someone like that rather than someone who's like, I only want to play the lead, you know what I mean? Right. Like, ew.
Right.
But now going into something else, this is like our Julie Andrews week. My friend Rachel York was on Wednesday, and we were talking about Julie Andrews, and you had the insane, that's like probably one of 2 people that I would fall over if I ever met. You got to work with Dame Julie Andrews on The Boyfriend. How was just encapsulate working with that woman?
I mean, everything you want her to be times 1,000, with like curse words thrown in. Like
yes,
she's got like
yes. Like when you hear Mary Poppins say F***, it's like,
you're like, she's like shakes her boobs at you. You're like, yes, but she's like just as kind, just as nice, just as generous, like unreal, and just that's it. She's like basically like a whore, like a useless whore is what she calls herself. But she's a trollop. And she told it to us while she was getting a street dedicated to her in Minneapolis. We were like on tour, and they were like, Julie Andrews Way. And she's like up, like getting the key to the city. And she's like, I'm such a trollop. She like turns to us and she's like, I'm a worthless whore. As I'm getting like named after me. She's amazing.
I'm using that from now on.
Spring Awakening, which you touched on a bit, and you were an onstage cover.
Yeah.
And you know, again, kind of encapsulate. I know you said that was obviously an incredibly impactful moment in your life that you then got to have a full circle moment and then come back to it. You're one of the very few people probably that has been able to originate a show and then also revive a show. That's another thing that is not common. So tell me really kind of quickly, I know it's another thing you can probably spend a whole hour talking about just that, but tell me quickly, how was that creating that show?
Unreal. Like I had seen the show off Broadway, and I had done the boyfriend tour, come back to New York, and gone back to school, and because I still hadn't finished my degree. And so a friend of mine was like, I gotta go see this show, my friends are in it. It's at the Atlantic Theater. And I was so tired, I'd had a bad day at school, and I was like, oh, fine, I'll go. I almost backed out. And I have never seen that experience. I've never seen anything like that. I still won't see anything like it. Like seeing people my age being entrusted with roles that were like this. It wasn't like Grease. It wasn't like, teeny boppers. It was like, we are dealing with some and to have this like fresh music and to see these talented people, like talent that I hadn't really seen at people my age. And I left the theater like shaking, and I called my mom and I was like, I'm going to be in this show. And she was like, okay. And I was like, no, I'm going to be in this show, because I knew it was going to Broadway, but I knew they were only looking for swings. And that was another time where I was like, if they would let me mop the floor in the theater, I would be in the theater. Like, I need to be on the ground floor of this because it's going to be something. And I auditioned, and they wouldn't give me an audition. My agents wouldn't get me an audition. I went to an open call. I didn't get seen. I mean, like, the amount of work I had to do to get that show. I was on my way to my callback, and I busted my eye open on the subway turnstile. I showed up to my final callback with blood pouring down my face and like a Band-Aid.
That's
like,
what they knew. They're like, this wants it.
She wants it. Who's like, I've been beaten. They were like, great, this is perfect. So I was like emotionally like raw. I mean, it ended up getting me the part, I swear to God. But in the moment, it was like the worst thing that had ever happened to me. So it was like,
crack your head open on the way to a callback.
What was it like meeting Duncan Sheik though? Were you barely breathing?
No, I didn't even care. I didn't even care about those people. I like wanted this show. Like, it was just this show. And so once I got in, it was such an exceptional experience to watch. Like, I got to watch John Gallagher do that show every night from like start to finish, from like him creating it to him winning a Tony. I got to watch John Groff like become who he is meant to be. Like, I watched people walk into their futures.
Yeah, it was a big life-changing moment, I think, for everyone involved in that show, and it changed a lot of what could be done on Broadway. I mean, it was a game-changing moment, and you were a part of it, which is
I was a part of it.
And game-changing actors,
Then along comes In the Heights, and I want to just briefly, this is another like kind of Julie Andrews moment. You got to work with one of the most prolific lyricists of art. He is like, this generation's Stephen Sondheim. I mean, he truly is unbelievable. Creating a show with, his first big show. What was that like, working with him and creating that show?
It was not like that at all. Like, he was this nerdy, still is. You guys all know.
Yeah.
If you know anything about Lynn, he's like this like theater nerd who like was working on his high school musical. That's what this was. Like, he wrote it in high school. This wasn't like a opus of any kind. This was like, this is a story I need to tell, and he spent 9 years developing it. So by the time I joined in, it was like this perfect group of people that were all there at the right moment, at the right time, to make his little like school play come to life. That's, so it had no pretense at all. We all knew he was very talented.
I think though that's where the success came in, was just the authenticity of what it is. Everything he writes is so like, yes. Yeah.
And people would be like, even when Hamilton came out, they'd be like, oh my God, you know about this Lin-Manuel? Like, he's reinventing the musical. And I was like, yeah, 5 years ago. Like,
I was there. Yeah.
I saw it. I told y'all, we won Best Musical. I don't know if you remember. Like, it's like, it's unreal that that he was doing this up until this point and still not really getting the.
Well, it was funny because In the Heights was
accolades.
like it won the Tony and it was a hit, but it wasn't really the hit that obviously it's not nothing we're nowhere close to what Hamilton is
Yeah, no,
as far as hit wise.
nothing is.
But In the Heights has gotten a whole new life, especially regionally, and then the film and everything because of. And I feel like it's another very important, obviously, story to tell. And so it's so wonderful that it's kind of coming back around again because of.
Yeah.
Did they ask you to come audition for the film?
I did, yeah. Yeah, I'm actually secretly in the film, but not really. My voice is in the film.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, then we get to your first big principal originating on Broadway, which I got to see you do and
Mm-hmm.
get to hang out with you afterwards, Addams Family. So I had a few friends in that show and I've gotten to hear so many fun and interesting stories about it, but you were working with literally, there's not a lot of shows that have that many people in it, meaning like people. So we had Nathan Lane, BB Newirth, Kevin Chamberlain, Jackie Hoffman, Terrence Mann, Carolee Carmelo. Good Lord.
Yeah.
So, and then you were not just in the show, but you were like, it was about you.
Yeah.
What was that like, being kind of diving into that pool and then the journey from Chicago to New York? I know it was such a massive change in what they did with the show, and then even from New York to the tour, another big change of what the show was. So what was that like? Did you feel like the show got better as it went? Was there things where you're like, oh, I wish they didn't cut that? Or, did you see the tour? What were your thoughts of how they changed it yet again? All that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like when I joined in, when I was in the ensemble and the readings, there were barely any songs. There was like 3 songs and they were still working out what this was. And we had these really experimental theater directors and Andrew Lippa, who I just think is a genius. And, just sort of this thing where it felt like it was going to be actually kind of a spooky experimental musical, which I still think that I sometimes mourn that. Like it never was.
It went very commercial.
Right. It never even was that in the readings because they had, you have Nathan Lane, you use Nathan Lane for what Nathan Lane is. And when you have Baby Newirth, you use her for what she is. When you have these people who, I think from the get, there was like a decision, do we stick with the original comics and make this kooky, weird, like kind of spooky show, or do we do a Nathan Lane musical? And they
did Nathan Lane musical.
We spent years just
making that decision
in the growing pains of making a Nathan Lane musical. So
I'm dying to know, what was it like?
They are amazing professional people. And like, I can't say that they were like,
answer.
No, but this is true though. It's because I'm not even actually being political, because I can say that they probably didn't like each other, but they never brought it to work. Never. They amazing. Gave each other the space that they needed to work. And they even kind of coined, like, they were fire and ice. And it was the dynamic you wanted to see play out. Sometimes that's what these characters are, and their friction. Do they like call each other at home? No. But did they ever fight or anything in front of us? Never. And it was very much like a family. We were very much a family, and in that we all played the roles of the family. And I was, sometimes a mama's girl and a daddy's girl, and I had parents, and that's what we did, but yeah, we got new directors. We basically slowly chipped away at like what that other thing was going to be. And unfortunately it took years and a bunch of audiences and a bunch of different venues to do it. And I definitely think
Virgilio's choreography in that was so good.
Yeah. I mean, the people they had, you didn't have any schlubs in there. Nobody that didn't know what they were doing, you know, but just a lack of,
and the design was beautiful. Yeah, it was really great. And did you end up seeing the sets and the costumes and the props and the puppets?
Yeah, you have them.
Yeah, we have them. Yeah.
I know. So I see them. I see them at downtown Disney.
Yeah. They have been repurposed. We got some permission because they did the tour, right? And they reworked it. And then I had such a passion for it because I love the Addams. I love the movies with Angelica Houston and Raul Julia. We got special permission to kind of make some interesting little tweaks to the show.
Yeah.
And from that, they were like, they felt, the creatives were like, oh my gosh, these little tweaks kind of, and I felt kind of cool because I was like, they had no idea who the hell I was. And so they were like, sure, yeah, go ahead and make these changes. And then they were such fan, we ended up now then being like represented in our production in the catalog and stuff like that, which is kind of cool. They do awesome. Talk about us maybe taking it on the road. And I have a question for you, because I know there was a journey with this, having seen some footage, and then I had my own vision for this. Wednesday braids, Wednesday no braids.
Yeah.
So when did it get decided that it was like no braids?
It was a process. Wednesday always was going to have braids. We always did it. And this happens to me a lot because, like, for some reason it's extraordinary that I have short hair. Like, it just blows people's minds. In musicals, like, girls just got to have hair, and dancers have hair. So I've always had a bob since I moved to New York. And I will rehearse something, and the plan will always be for me to have a wig. And then right at the end, they're like, you know what? What if we just used your hair? Like, they love this idea. It happened with Hercules. I had a fitting for that big ass, like, ponytail.
Big old wig,
And then they watched a couple rehearsals and they were like, you know what? She's got a bob. Like, they just designed conversations about Wednesday where she was getting updated, and they were like, what if she has a hair? And then the idea was, what if she starts with braids? And the original opening number in Chicago was called Clandango, and it was basically Wednesday's bat mitzvah. She was turning a woman. She gets buried into the ground and emerges and does this, like, flamenco dance with her mother as the torch is passed as her womanhood. I mean, all of this stuff that, like, the show was about Wednesday, all of that went away. Nathan Lane musical. And so it was like, that's how it started. And so we had this moment where I had these braids, and grandma pulls out a knife and whacks them off during the song. And then I, like, show up with my bob, and that's, like, my growing up. And we could never get it to work. It was, like, so complicated. We wasted so many previews on it. We got to New York, and there was, like, a part during Pulled where they had me, like, actually rip them off, like, in my distress. I, like, yanked them. It was so hard to get those off. And so eventually we were just like, Wednesday's got a bob. And that was the evolution of.
So it's funny. I have my story about the, because I was like, God, I was like, she, as a fan of the Addams Family, I was like, you have to see her as Wednesday for, like, just a moment, which I understand why they put in all the effort then to do it. But when she goes upstairs to put on the yellow dress, I was like, she's going to cut her hair. And so she went upstairs and came back and, like, hacked her hair and put on the yellow dress.
We actually tried that as well.
Did you?
Yes. They said, they were like, it just raises so many questions. Like, she just got upstairs. She had enough time to change her clothes and cut her hair. And, like, we don't want people to, like, not know who she is. She just went away as one person. She's going to come back in a dress and a new haircut. It's just confusing. Like, we tried everything.
I did it. And then all I did, we were given permission to add, like, he was upset about the dress, and then or I think it was, I forget. No, she was upset about the dress, and he was like, your hair, and then, like, we literally just were able to add a line, and people were like, okay. But anyway, moving right along. Speaking of legends, then you go and you book season 2 of this little show that was big for our industry, Smash, had some of the most amazing music, working with those. That songwriting team, and then, of course, Addams Family tie-in, Angelica Houston.
Yeah.
What was that like? I mean, of course, it was such a bummer that it didn't get, picked up for a 3rd season. I think all of us were so excited to see our industry represented in a mainstream way, and to get all that content, the production numbers, and I think it was always like, are they gonna make the musical? Are we gonna see it on stage? And then you guys did the concert and everything, but. What was that process like? Has the rumblings of anything ever happening with that further all completely died down?
I think that there's always rumblings because of now this, like, nostalgia machine of everybody. Like, and I think that we learned, I say we, but I think they learned really early on that, like, they could never make a musical out of Bombshell that would satisfy everybody's curiosity based on like the tiny pieces of Bombshell. Like
Mhm.
anything that they would make would be disappointing. So I think that idea kind of went by the wayside, and it was a little bit more, it created more of the lore to not have the musical, to have everybody still imagine what would that musical have been like, you know? And it helps you suspend disbelief a little bit when you don't know the pitfalls. Every musical has a pitfall, you know? So I think it's that. I mean, there's definitely rumblings. We're getting together. I don't know if they've announced this. We're doing like a little Zoom reunion. They're airing that concert. So we'll all be together.
Amazing. That's going to be cool.
You
You heard it here.
Yeah, it's like next week somewhere. But anyway, it was a crazy experience. It was good. I think that to be honest with you, it was difficult because while the business was being represented, the people in the business were not supportive of it. And the people, and you coined the term hate watching based on that show. We were one of the first shows to create that term. Was that people watching it to talk shit about it on Twitter. I don't know anything about what the Showtime version was. I was not involved in any of that. I think Teresa Rebeck is an incredibly talented writer and probably would have made something complex and interesting. I don't know that anybody was ready for anything complex and interesting about Broadway at that time. It seemed like TV was just not that complex at the time, if you think about it. Like we didn't have the Breaking Bad and the those like kind of things where we were going for it. Right. So I don't know, but yes, of course things had to be watered down for NBC, I think. But you know, that's okay. I don't think it meant that it was a worse show. I think it just meant that there's a lot of cooks in network television. There's a lot of cooks and like a lot of people in charge and a lot of miscommunication and anyway, it was an expensive show, and if it wasn't gangbusters, they couldn't afford to keep doing it.
Oh yeah, I mean, just the salaries alone had to be bananas.
Well, the production numbers. I mean, each episode it was like $5 million an episode just to put those costumes, and we would have numbers where we would shoot the whole thing, and then it would get sent to LA, and they'd be like, "We don't like that fabric that one skirt is made out of," and they'd reshoot the whole number with all new costumes. Like, it was a lot of and desperately trying to please these viewers who liked the first season but had thoughts and notes. The second season was desperately trying to get them back on board of an unpleasable group of people. And it truly wasn't until the show had been canceled and I was doing First Date that I was out at the stage door and people were like, "We love Smash." And I was like, "You did?"
You did?
I had never heard somebody say they liked the show. Never.
Wow. It was a guilty pleasure for me.
Yeah.
New Yorkers didn't really
because
like
everyone's like, "She took her wig off and she doesn't have a wig cap on. This show's not real." And I'm like,
"Oh my God."
I'm like, "Have you ever watched a real surgery? Because it's not in the dark like they do in Grey's Anatomy, and it's not like, you know, people could not suspend their disbelief in that. No, people love it now. They want it. Where is it? Why did it get canceled? I know. I was there.
A couple questions from the chat room, as always. So real quick, how did you approach that audition process? You had already done TV things. Someone wanted to know what your experience was like on Gossip Girl, and then another like, was that audition process? Did you approach that differently than you would a musical theater audition, or was that something that they knew they wanted you because they were obviously casting from our role?
They did not know they wanted me. They were casting everybody. They were looking for everybody. And they had actually specifically chosen an ethnicity that they were looking for because that's television.
Yeah.
And they pick like quotas and they say we have to have a certain amount of whatever. So so that role that I got was not supposed to be available to me at all. And then they found another ethnicity that they could put into another role. And so they were like, "Okay, now we can open this up." So it was not on my radar at all. And then they called and they were like, it's funny, like they'll pick one ethnicity and then they'll be like, "And since we're not going to get that, everybody." It's like, I just get kind of like lumped into the like, "Do you have an ethnic last name? You now are available for this thing." So I was just sort of like, I'm probably not going to get this. This is like just such an afterthought. But when I went into the audition, I did not know this, but the showrunner, who's the guy like in charge of the whole show, was like, "Oh, Krysta." And I was like, "Do I know you?" He's like, "No, we've never met, but I wrote your episode of Gossip Girl." So my very first television appearance that I'd ever made was written by Josh Safran, who has now he show ran Quantico. He's the reason I was on Quantico. I've been involved in every TV show he's ever created now because of that. So that was a fun experience. But
That's
with that
amazing.
show, no, I sang and I read, and he kind of was like, this feels like what I want, and he went to bat for me. I had one audition. I didn't test. I didn't have a callback. I didn't have anything. I started work the week after. It was like a really
That's
fast
the way.
situation.
That's the way right there.
Yeah. I love those jobs. Love them.
So then you got to come back to Broadway. First date. I love Randy and Sue, who are your partners on that. Great people. What was your experience like on that? Was that a good experience for you?
Best. Yeah, a great experience. So fun. Getting to originate something like that was truly mine, and that, you know, I was the lead of, where it wasn't, you know,
not based on
a dilution.
movie,
Yes.
Yeah.
And Zach and I had great chemistry. We worked well together. We're still very good friends. And he and I got to create this together on equal sort of playing fields, because he's like a big movie star, but he had never done Broadway, and I had not a big movie star, but I knew my way around Broadway. So like we got to like bring our experiences together. It was awesome, and I loved it. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And it really taught me.
Really small ensemble piece. That was great.
Yes, small, and it just
Levi,
taught me a lot
right?
about
So
taught me a lot about stamina.
So now, because we're just, again, like we
I
can
know.
spend so much time, and there's so many more great things I want to talk about. But I know we're going to start winding down here in a little bit. But I want to talk about something that was quite inspiring, because you really put, 2014 was a very impactful year in your life, and not because you booked something amazing, but because you came out and let people know that you had breast cancer. Now, you were a big face for that, and putting a new face on it, and showing that it is important for women of all ages to be mindful of being checked, and to self-check and all that stuff. But, you know, you really are one to always turn your scars into stars, because you literally like went out and full on, you created chemocouture.com, and then leading to Cosmo reaching out and having you share your experiences. And then I'm assuming the role on Chasing Life on ABC Family, I'm assuming that came from that. I mean, you really got to do a lot for cancer awareness and all of that. So I'm assuming something like that had to change your life for forever, in both the good and the bad way. So what was that journey like for you? And I mean, talking,
You're definitely doing it like
for so long, and all the things, and the good and the bad. I think as far as it related to like my life at that time, you might be able to tell that I'm a kind of type A, and I'm always like, if the door's closed, I'm looking for the window. I'm like trying to figure out ways to make things happen. And I had sort of been muscling my career a little bit. And once that first date had closed, I had a job that didn't end up panning out. There was all of this stuff that had happened that year that kind of were leading me to this very low place in my life. And then I get this diagnosis of breast cancer. And one of my first thoughts is like work, because not only because I love my work, but I need health insurance. That's what's the problem with this system. So now I'm like, okay, I have to figure out how to work, but I also don't know what I'm going to be capable of and how sick I'm going to be. So I kept it a secret for a while and just tried to work as much as I could until I could get my insurance. So that also was this kind of muscling thing of me being like, I just got to make those things happen. And then once I found out that I had to get chemo, I was like, okay, well, now there's no hiding this. I won't be able to keep the bob. So I won't be having like this thing where I can just sort of play it on the down low. Everyone's going to know. And I didn't want to disappear from the world, even though I'm actually quite a private person. I don't put a lot of my stuff out on the internet. Like I don't like people knowing too much about my personal life. But
I remember you told me, you're like, I live as far away from Times Square as I can, because
I just like don't, I don't want people to know stuff. And so but I started to realize like I was gonna then disappear and go through this. And I was running into people, like pilot season was happening, and they were like, how's your pilot season going? And I was like, my what? Like I I can't keep this in anymore. It like felt more like a lie, which the one thing I had learned at that moment was like, better out than in at this point. Like, I don't want anything in my body that's not supposed to be there. So like, I'm not keeping any secrets. I'm not pretending I'm anything that I'm not. And I came out with it. That's where the blog came from. And part of that was I told my agents, I said, I'm just going to be a writer for 6 months. I'm going to see what happens if I don't audition, I don't work, I don't like muscle any of this, and see what happens. And within that 6 months, I got that offer for Chasing Life. I was on the Mysteries of Laura. I got the Spring Awakening revival. Like, all of these jobs started showing up that weren't jobs that I would have maybe gone for or thought that I needed or boosted me. I mean, the Spring Awakening thing was a 2-week run at the Wallace Theater in Beverly Hills. It was not a Broadway show. It was never going to be a Broadway show. And I was 30 years old playing a teenager. Like, it was not supposed, that was not a career move.
And you still could.
Yeah, that was not a career move for me. So I think that what it really did for me was make me take my foot off the gas, make me take my hands off the wheel and say, like, I am not going to make that my life to figure out what's the best thing for me. And things came to me that I didn't even know were going to be amazing. And it put me in a different category too, as far as like how people see me. They now know that I'm not like shiny, squeaky, whatever. Like, I've lived some life. I've seen some shit, and like, give me your parts of these complicated, messy women. And I'm so grateful for that.
I think it's such a great lesson that everyone, someone, Denise said, amen, like, better out than in, and being your own, truthful self and living out loud like that. And we have Allie, who said that chemo couture got her through a really horrible battle in 2015. And so there's someone in the chat room that talking about Spring Awakening, transitioning into that, it wasn't supposed to be a Broadway show. And it, of course, ended up being this amazing chance to relive a very important moment in your life in a different way. And Dylan in the chat room was curious about the experience round 2 and what it was like to create the life-changing and iconic scene during Don't Do Sadness, and even more specifically the wig moment. Was that a Michael Arden thing? Was that a you thing? Was it collaboration? Where did that come from?
It really was. I think honestly, Michael thought about me for this part because of what I was going through. I don't know that I would have been asked to do it. I mean, partially why I got asked to do it was because I only had 2 weeks to learn it. And it was either you had to know Spring Awakening or you had to know ASL, and you couldn't learn both. So I really quickly, he asked me and was like, this will be easy because you'll be laid up. I was doing chemo at the time. And he was like, you can just use your hands, So I learned by video before rehearsal. I would like show up to rehearsal, but like in pain and all this stuff. And I remember being at my first rehearsal, and Spencer Liff, who I think did something in Orange County recently. Singing in the Rain. Yeah. And he would lead this warm up that was like really intense. And I was like, I'm not doing that warm up. I just finished chemo yesterday. Like, I'm not doing push-ups, Yeah. And I like turned to my right, and Ali Stroker is on her wheelchair, like doing tricep dips on her wheelchair. And I was like, okay, that's what this is. Like, we are a ragtag group of misfit toys that are going to come together and do something we know nothing. We have deaf people dancing and think like none of us know what we're doing, and we need to like pull it together. And so I think that he really wanted that feeling of these sort of, for lack of a better word, like broken people that were making themselves whole with this new concept. And so it was his idea for the wig, and we didn't do it on Broadway actually because it just didn't feel as necessary at that time, but for the LA thing it was his idea.
It was a beautiful piece of theater. Okay, 3 quick things, because then we got to get to our we want to talk about Hercules in a second, because that was very recent. But real quick, so trial and error, you got to be John Lithgow's daughter. What?
Yeah, I have the best dads.
Oh my God, amazing. I love trial and error.
I have the best dads.
Yeah, truly, that had to be insane. And then our PR team, the press room, worked on the season 3 premiere of Indoor Boys and said it was just terrific. How is that going, or went well?
Yeah, it went great. I mean, we won a bunch of Indie Series awards, and we were nominated. The awards had to be canceled this year, but we were nominated for the most. And it's a really fun show, and it's a perfect thing to watch while you're all indoors.
So Watch it.
Watch
And
it.
then lastly, I have to talk about Halston. You're working with Ryan Murphy, Ewan McGregor, playing the iconic Liza Minnelli. I mean, I know you've played Annette Funicello before, so you've tackled
a little bit. I had a
played,
cameo. Yeah.
yeah, but you've played a famous person before, but nothing quite like Liza Minnelli. So is that all in the can? That's all
No, we were only an episode in when we got well, we had to go on hold. So
on hold. Okay.
we're all still hoping it comes back. We have a Zoom
has to.
rehearsal.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's no
it
air
has
date or
to.
anything.
Yeah, this is yeah, it's so funny. Someone said the Julie and Liza week because we talked about Liza this week too.
All right.
Anyway, yeah. Yeah, is that been daunting, or is that something that you're just kind of like,
Yes.
yeah.
Super daunting. People would ask me that about Wednesday. They'd be like, "Oh, are you scared to bring on an iconic character?" And I really wasn't, because it's like kind of a cartoon, and several people have played it,
Yeah.
but also that the musical was exploring a new version of Wednesday. So I felt like I could do that. This has been just the most pressure. Like, I got the audition and I like dropped the phone. I was like, I can't do that. I can't do that. I should do that. I should do that. Like, it was like in that same moment of like, this terrifies me. I need to get this part. And I'm still terrified. I am terrified. So let's hope it turns out good.
Yeah, when you see the side by side too, it's so funny. It's like when you look at Emily Skinner and Alice Ripley, they don't look anything alike, and yet when they play twins, they look everything alike.
Yeah.
And you have this, the beautiful, big eyes, same kind of structure, and I can't wait because with all the like Hollywood, jazz they're gonna do to you. I'm sure you're gonna be a dead ringer, but then I know you as a great actor, so it's gonna be fun to see you tackle that part. And then Ryan just doesn't seem to do anything bad ever. I mean, his work is. I want him to direct a Broadway show so badly.
Yeah,
so
I bet he will.
Because he clearly loves the Broadway community. He hires from that community all the time.
Totally.
So you gotta talk him into it. But okay, so now we're gonna transition to Hercules.
And like a Susan Egan Disney princess.
Yeah, badass.
She's like badass. She's quippy. She's fun. It's my boyfriend's favorite Disney movie. It's like how we bonded when we met. And so then when they offered it to me, I was like, oh, hell yeah, that's going to be fun. That wasn't so daunting. It was fun. Because again, like, it's a new version of something. It's like, if I get to take something and put my spin on it, it's just a blast.
You had a bob. So
I had a bob.
It was the
production that we did in New York was with Public Works, which means there was, it was a community outreach program. There were 250 cast members. So that production could simply just not move to Broadway. Fast and Furious, it's like so crazy. So I don't know. They did just announce they're going to do a live action movie of it though. And I was like, so I'll let you know. So sweet, so suave. Like when you look at him, you're like, ooh, what a drink of water. And then he's just like this puppy. He's just like, he's like, let's dance more. Let's jump more. Let's do more. And you're like, dude, you're so young and excited. And I'm like, so like, it was so fun to like work with somebody who is your ride or die in a show like that. Like that is your partner.
It sounds like for those two parts, it's exactly the right kind of energy.
Exactly. But like, I would trust him with my life.
She rolls her eyes and I'm filled with butterflies.
How do you have that?
Pretty sure there
I don't
are not like her.
Nice, Jelani. Nice little
Just like
Shut
a
your
space.
face.
Hi, Krysta.
Andre Jordan. Who is Andre Jordan?
I've been sneaking here the whole time. You just didn't
You've
know.
been in here the whole time?
Yes, I
His
have.
name was
my little
Andre.
puppy? Aren't you my little puppy, Jelani?
I'm your little puppy. Always. The most amazing scene partner. I have to speak into this mic now that I put into my computer. But she's the most amazing scene partner because she is so giving and so willing to collaborate, and she's so freaking smart. Like, she will not stop until she's satisfied. And that fire, we both have that same fire. We're both that same way. We were like relentless. We're like, this script is not done until we're done, until we're really gonna flesh out these characters. And she was so game. I mean, my favorite moment of the whole thing was doing the date scene and our version of the date scene, our new version of it. And that came from 3 workshops of us working together, of us trying to understand our chemistry, trying to understand how to make it as funny and heartful as we could.
Yeah. Yeah, and even through rehearsal of the time we did it, it was still figuring
they
out
were still
what it
morphing,
was, changing
yeah.
it.
Act 2 got a lot of rewrites, right? The way that they
Well,
kind
they
of
wanted to integrate the community into it and make it a show about a community and how a person can come from a community and be the voice of it, not just this hero that stands alone. Like it had to be integrated into how he inspires people, I think, is what led it to be a little bit of a different piece, where he comes to the realization that humanity is divine, and that had to be kind of narrowed into easier.
I was so, because this is a long time coming, because they workshopped it on the Disney cruise ships for a long time.
Oh yeah.
With, you know, Jennifer Hudson was in it, and then finally to hear that it was going to get to New York, and then I had seen an article recently saying that Disney had abandoned it going to Broadway, but that they were going to release direct to licensing. And I went, no! I was like, this is like the one show that you should be doing right now. And I thought it was brilliant, you know, casting also. I think it's their first time, Jelani, if I'm wrong, I think it's the first time they've cast for a Broadway musical, not like the theme park, but the first time they've cast a person not of the race of the original cartoon. So I think you're the first person to break down that particular wall for like a Broadway experience, which is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. We had many workshops where they didn't even bring in any singers. It was just Jelani and I and 2 other actors at the table, like working on these characters and working on what the implications were for this change. What, you know, I remember our director Lear talking to me about Meg and how, like, it's sort of unclear what her job is in the movie, that she's kind of like this vamp. And she was like, what I want to see more is that women, like 80% of women who are incarcerated are because they had like been in a position with a partner, with a male partner. And that's sort of Meg's story, is that she gives up her freedom because, you know, she tried to save her boyfriend and then he leaves her. That there is this edge to like this girl that got hurt and didn't then just like go, she is the boss. She has decided to like take it and not just vamp around, not that, you know, but just that she has control over these situations. And the implications of Jelani and Hercules being like a bit bigger and maybe a bit menacing because he's strong, and like this weird sort of menacing to society feeling that people have, and like what were the implications of Jelani playing that role, and the social implications of these characters doing the actions that they were doing. And I think it not only deepened the material, but it was necessary, because you can't stand on the stage with New Yorkers and fake that, you know, we're not talking about the social issues.
Yeah,
beautiful show.
Yeah, it makes it way more important. Now, you both got to work with a dear friend of mine, Roger Bart, of course, who was the voice of Hercules. I bet he had to have been a genius in that part. Like, he had to be just like so stupid, silly, funny.
I wish people saw like the shit that he, excuse my language, the stuff that he did, messing around, improvising. Like,
I can't imagine.
He's so effortlessly funny. It's intimidating. You're like,
I love my phone conversations with him, or text threads or whatever, I cry laugh, because like he's insane. He's so brilliant, and it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm gonna have him on here, and I know it's gonna be a super funny.
And he's so like the nicest,
the sweetest,
so sweet.
The sweetest. Yeah, you would never know it. That he was, you know, Roger Bart. Like, yeah, he's amazing.
That's the other thing about our show that I'm realizing in post, is that like we had such great funny people. Like Krysta Rodriguez is hilarious, y'all.
Hilarious.
She is.
Come on now, you know you are.
It's not really advice, but when I was like people would ask how I was doing in high school. My parents would be like, "She's good, just trying not to finish school." Like, they were like really supportive of me doing what I needed to do, even if that meant I didn't get a degree.
Her parents are literally
the
the best. Her parents are amazing. Raise your hand. We can, Gigi can find you and unmute you. We'll have a couple questions either for Krysta or, of course, Andre Johnson, otherwise known as Jelani.
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Janice and I have worked together before.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
At OSHA.
OSHA, right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so you touched, I put this in the chat, but I'll just say it. You touched initially how with Smash they need to fill certain like ethnicity quotas. So what is your experience and thoughts on being a person of color in this industry and being able to play roles like Meg that aren't like specifically ethnic roles?
Yeah, I had a lot of problems with it when I was younger in LA. I would audition for things and I couldn't get auditions for like Anne Frank, or I had to change my last name because I was auditioning to play Marie Osmond in a movie, and they were like, oh, they wouldn't want like Marie Osmond, who's not ethnic, to have an ethnic last name, and so I had to change my name. So there was like all of this, what I found to be like, you know, Hollywood racism that was happening. So that when I moved to New York, it was actually a great feeling because they didn't care as much in theater. There's a suspension of new ideas and just sort of being willing to try new things. And so I was able to play Wednesday. I was able to play, you know, I got to be Hispanic and In the Heights. Yet I was a German girl in Spring Awakening, and I was Bibi Benzenheimer the Jew in like Chorus Line. Like I could do whatever I wanted, and I felt that freedom. By the time I get back to LA and like was doing stuff like that, they had changed the rules, and now it was like I couldn't get a part because I wasn't Hispanic enough, which is
you're like in that you could be anything like moment, but you have the Hispanic last name. But
and I'm half. You know, my mom is white, and my dad is Spanish, so I would have auditions and they would call and be like, does it say anywhere on your birth certificate that you're Hispanic? And I'm like, no, that doesn't say that on your birth certificate. You know, like so it became a reverse sort of thing where I'm appreciative of the quotas, but I also think like it shouldn't limit what people can do, because to be honest, now that I'm a ethnic hire, I'm the best friend. I don't get seen for the lead parts, and that needs to change. Like there's still so much to push through. So I do find Broadway or theater to be a bit more welcoming in that arena.
Amazing. Good question, Janisa.
Good.
I think
Sammy Dorfman has her hand up. I'm going to unmute her.
Great.
Go ahead, Sammy.
Maybe like one last question, because she's been so generous with her time. We got
Yes.
I am learning the power of my voice, of my breath, and of like the I'm just gonna come out and say it, like the lower half of my body, like my pelvis, and you know, like what's her name, Kristen Chenoweth says to sing from your hoo-ha. Like there is, not to get too intense or political, but there is untapped power of women that does not want to be seen and needs to be seen. And I am not going to waste any more time not showing it. So I have found that power comes from knowing that everything in the world comes from my lower part of my body, or a woman's body. Literally, the world is created from the lower part of our bodies.
Literally, yes.
Literally. And my power comes from there. The earth is in there. The world, like we're all from there. And so like everything is coming from there from now on. And every song, if I teach, every song about love is about there. Every song about fear is about there. Like it's all in there.
This sounds like this sounds like a vagina monologue.
Yes, exactly, exactly. But it's not, it's also just like your breath. It's just grounding. It's feeling like that, loosening that up. And once I noticed that we're just afraid to move our hips sometimes, and like roll your hips around, and you'll feel a lot more powerful.
An amazing response. And that's the best way, honestly, to end this, you guys.
To end Friday and see how we feel.
Fantastical Friday.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Angelani.
So amazing to have you both. You guys, we're so honored to have artists like this coming on to share their time and experience and everything with us. So stay tuned. Keep following us on social. We'll be putting on a schedule. We have Lisa Loeb coming on next week.
Yes.
Donald is
Big
slated
week
to come
next
on.
week.
Yeah, we have Audra McDonald coming on. Alice Ripley's coming back on to teach a vocal masterclass. Rachel York's coming back on to teach a masterclass. Roger Bart, all kinds of fun people. So stay tuned with what's going on here at 3D. And until we can be in the same room together again, doing what we love, whether that's in a seat, in a pit, off stage, on stage, I just send all of our love to all of you guys, and a special shout out to those of you that are sheltering in place alone, because you know that is absolutely the hardest thing to be doing right now. And there's things that are open. Send people stuff. Let them know you love them and you're thinking about them. Everyone have an amazing weekend. We'll see you.